Hi, I'm Charlotte and this is Time Emma Tries to Read. So I've done actually more reading this week than I thought I would, and it was definitely better than last week. And I'm in my shed in daylight hours, so what more can I ask for? I've got to be really, really quick though, so I'm hoping to film this all in one go and to make sense. A lot of the time I do one video and then I think, oh, I said that bit a bit weird, and I record it a second time. So I can't do that this time. So this is how I usually am. There'll be probably a little bit of flapping in the middle where I don't really know what's going on. Okay, so the last time I left you, I was going on a train journey to Cardiff, which is like an hour there and back. And I chose in the end, completely went away from all the things I suggested and definitely went away from Non-Fiction November because I chose Leonora Carrington's The Hearing Trumpet. So Leonora Carrington is a woman that I became really interested in the summer because I read the biography about her, The Surreal Life of Leonora Carrington. I believe it's by Joanna Moorhead, I think that's the name, and it's written by her niece. Awesome book. This is one of her fictional works. So Leonora Carrington was a surrealist. So she painted, but she also wrote fiction. And I've never read any surrealist fiction. I'm not a massive fan of surrealist art, if I'm completely honest. I love understanding art, so I was happy to read a book about her, and I'd happily watch a program about Dali or whoever, but it's not a particular it's not visually something that I enjoy. Even though there's lots of puzzles in it, which is kind of cool, it's just not something I've ever particularly liked. So I wasn't really sure what surrealist fiction would be like, and it turns out it is fairly bonkers. What I've started to do since I've been on BookTube is that I find myself speed reading a lot when I never would have done that before, except when I was maybe doing something for my studies. So I find myself speed reading in order to just better get to grips with, am I going to like this or not? Am I going to be wasting my time on this or not? And I'm not 100% sure sometimes whether I enjoy the fact I'm doing that, because I feel like I'm not giving the book enough of a chance. So when I started this, I was reading it on the train and I was reading it a little bit slower. But then I started to sort of panic and think, well, I've only got 15 minutes left of this train journey and then, back to the real world. So I kind of speed read a little bit of it. But what I kind of know makes something a good book is when it pulls me back down and makes me read slowly again. So I've done it in a few other books previously this year. I've kind of picked up the pace because I'm not really sure quite whether I'm interested in the passage that I'm reading or the book as a whole, and then something has made me go just stop and slow right down again, and this book kept doing that, so that's awesome. Yeah, it's hard to describe because it is so insane, but basically it's about an elderly woman called Marion Leatherby, and she is virtually deaf, and there's kind of a great description that she's written it all from the first person. So she describes her appearance, and it's pretty ghastly, and she says she says I've got no teeth, and she can't, she doesn't, it's not ghastly in a nasty way. This is where I would probably stop and start recording again, because I was like, oh, I don't like the fact I've said that older people look horrible. Okay, I'm just gonna have to say now, I don't think old people look horrible. She describes it deliberately in a kind of gross way. Okay, but she does it like this. Indeed, I do have a short grey beard, which conventional people would find repulsive. Personally, I find it rather gallant. Stuff like that is awesome. So, you kind of love her. She's got a son called Galahad and a daughter-in-law called, is it Miriam? Or I can't remember what her name is now. But the daughter-in-law and her son are basically all trying, and her grandson are all trying to scheme to get her packed off to an old people's home. And the one that they choose is this really weird one. Does it say it in here? It's something about the see, it's bad that I can't remember any of the names, but it is honestly really good. She goes off to this old people's home, and there are people living in buildings that look like shoes, buildings that look like toadstools, and it's run by this couple who are really miserly, and they themselves are quite plump, but all of the residents are really skinny because they're all on rations. Yeah, all sorts of weird things happen. It's almost impossible to sort of tell you everything that happens, but you have to be in it. You have to go for the ride. And once I was in for the ride, I loved it. And then actually what I really loved is when I finished, I went back to the start and I read the introduction, which is, as we all know, the order in which things should go. And the introduction in this one is by Ali Smith, who obviously wrote many things that I've now forgotten the name of. Is it The Incidental? Oh, The Accidental. Another reason to stop and edit, but I won't. Yeah, she writes a great introduction. She kind of goes into it and explains all of the feminist undertones and all of the sort of her real life stories that have influenced this fairly fantastical story, because it ends in this kind of apocalyptic vision. It's really quite fantastic. Nothing I say is a spoiler, because you just cannot predict any of the stuff that's gonna happen in this book. So in short, I kind of wanted to start from the beginning and do it again. And if I didn't have a child and had more time on my hands, I probably would have started from the beginning. And I keep looking at it up on my shelf, a bit like the way I've been looking at Anna Burns's The Milkman that I read a month ago, and thinking, should I just pull it down and start again? Because I just want to get more from it. So I think that's the top review, if ever you could have one. But it is, you know, fairly bonkers. And yeah, again, it's one of those, if you can get a sample of it and if you don't feel you get on with it, then I wouldn't bother, because it is £9.99 in UK pounds for that. So I loved it, and I can't wait to read another one of hers. I've also been cracking on with Michelle Obama's Becoming, and I am now almost halfway, and I am absolutely loving it. One of my favourite stories so far has been really since Barack's come into it. You know, the way she describes him is just awesome, and he sounds like, you know, he's living in this dingy sort of student apartment, and there's nothing really in it but books, and he just, every spare minute of the day he's reading. I mean, that just sounds amazing. And yeah, the story of his proposal to her is also a classic. And there's some really sad bits in there. And just again, she's just a really inspiring person, because she's just so honest about her own behaviour, her own sort of attitudes in the past and how they've now changed. So I'm really enjoying it. I like anybody who can be self-effacing like that. So I just pop that down. Oh, that's not going to balance on my heater very well. I'll be fine. And then today, I have read Country Dance by Margiad Evans. So we went to see my parents today. They live about an hour away from where we live. And they live in a little barn that they've converted, and it's not converted in a grand way. It's converted very much in a, yes, it's still a barn way. They don't have any electricity. They've got a couple of solar panels, but it's not even enough to power a fridge at this time of year. So they've got like a little pantry that they put their cold things in, and just hope for the best, really. And, you know, they sort of survive by candlelight and battery light, and yeah, it's quite amazing. They don't have, they've just put a little bit of running water in, but it's water they collect off the tank. There's no like mains water, so it's really going back to basics. And that's how my parents like to live. So it's how I grew up. Not in that barn, but in a very similar situation that they put me and my sister through when we were doing up a house. So yeah, we lived in a caravan for like, I don't know, it must have been over a decade. Also with no running water, also with no electric for quite some time. Many pots and pans catching the drips of water from the ceiling that had more or less caved in. That's pretty much how it was. That was a bit of a diversion from what I'm saying. On the way, I read this. So this is Country Dance, I've already said that, Margiad Evans. And I'm buddy reading this with Sean of Sean the Book Maniac and Ange from Beyond the Pages. And Ange, I think, has just sent a Voxer message today. But because I was out of internet signal to actually listen to it, because they live in the back of Beyond, I haven't listened to your message, Ange. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of the book and not actually talk about the whole book until I've listened to their messages and made sure they've read it, because I don't want them to have spoilers. So I've already said this is quite a tragic story set in Wales, and what's occurred to me whilst reading it is that actually I really did need to read it again, because the other readings were all for university and I just didn't take in so many other parts of the story that are in there. I was just interested in the bits that would be useful to me, and now I can read the whole story. It's just even more beautiful. I'm really scared to see what Sean thinks, mostly because I know he's like, you know, loves DNFing books like there's no tomorrow. So I really hope he doesn't do it to this one, because it is so beautiful. And the only thing that struck me this time is that I didn't notice the first time, is there's so much sadness. Like nothing goes right for the people of the village she lives in, let alone anything else. You know, the hay fails, and then the corn fails, and then the chimneys are on fire, and then somebody gets kicked by a horse, and just everything that can go wrong will go wrong. But having grown up in a farm sort of life, lots of that stuff actually rings really true, and your future does sort of hang in the balance depending on what the seasons throw at you. So I have really enjoyed reading that today, more or less in, well, sort of 2 sittings, on the way there and on the way back. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. And then, yeah, that's going to be amazing. So, and then the last one is The Origins of Totalitarianism, which I have barely scratched at all today. It's horrible. I can't, it's not that the book is horrible, it's just I can't find the time. So I'm working all weekend, not a great sign for whether I'm going to be able to read. Probably not going to take this one with me because it's just so hard. I might try and do a chapter tonight. I'm sorry, Kate. I will try and do more. And then there was another book lurking in here that I was going to talk about, but I can't see it. Oh, yes. So in keeping with my whole non-fiction November, I am going to take Lynette Roberts with me to work over the weekend. And the reason why I can get away with doing that is because I work sort of in a place where we do deal with literature. And this is not, you know, if there's a moment of spare time, it's not the end of the world if I happen to read a little smidge of this. So yeah, this is Welsh literature, so this sort of counts as almost extra work. Like at the minute I'm reading David Jones's In Parenthesis, which I don't have a copy to show you, but it's an awesome book, and that is sort of work related. So I can get away with taking a slightly longer lunch break to read that, and I'll be able to take a slightly longer lunch break to read Lynette as well. Okay, so yes, those are my books that I've done this week, and I've got 1 week left to finish Non-Fiction November, and I'm looking over behind the camera because I can see that I also promised to read So Many Books by Gabrielle Zaid. I have not done that. I don't know. I've read 1 out of the ones I picked. That's not a great start. How is your Non-Fiction November going? Please let me know. Please tell me what you've been reading. Oh, the other one I was going to read was Olivia Laing, and I haven't read that. In fact, the camera is sitting on that. So I've obviously forgotten about it, that it was become part of my camera pile. Okay, right. Yes, I hope you have a lovely weekend, that you're not working and you get to have some time reading and cozying up because it's so nice and wintry now. And, oh, and the last thing I'm going to say is I've got some books that should hopefully be arriving. Who said they weren't going to do any more book hauls? Because I'm going to do a Christmas video. Who have I become? Yes, I have tried to choose some literary Christmas things. So that will be a couple of weeks, next week, December. Okay, I will see you soon. Have a nice weekend. Bye.